Welcome in, everyone. Welcome to another Beyond All Reason video. We are going to be taking a look today at the Cortex economy and putting them in a tier list based on largely three things. I think it's three, maybe a little bit more. Both how effective it is, how it compares to other factions' versions, the consistency with which you will constantly build these items, and we might add a couple more different things that we're going off of, but it's essentially just my opinion of these different buildings, okay, and on whether or not you should build them frequently or infrequently. So first off, we're starting with the Cortex energy converter here. The Cortex energy converter is it's a T1 energy converter. It costs, I believe, something like 70 metal in order to or 70 energy in order to produce one metal. And I wouldn't say it's the best at like eco scaling in any way, because it is, you have to put in quite a bit of energy to get out only a single metal. And that energy alone costs quite a bit. And the return on your investment is generally not going to really be felt until much later on in the game, where it's been up and running for several minutes. I believe the return on the investment is like some 4 or 5 minutes of running constantly in order to pay for itself. So it's kind of expensive. I would put this actually in like C tier, which is literally just meaning very situational. It does provide value, and if you are overflowing, it is a good idea to build these, but it is not something where you want to plan to try to scale because of the building of these. You don't want to have your entire economy based on energy conversion unless it's absolutely necessary. Okay, Cortex windmill. We're going to put this in the B tier, because it is if you've played Beyond All Reason very much, you've heard the complaints with Cortex in the fact that their windmills are, I believe, like 10 more metal a piece than the Armada windmills, or it might be like 7 or something. I don't remember exactly, but it's a little bit more expensive than Armada windmills, and when you scale that up, it does end up being quite a bit more metal. So they are not quite as efficient as the Armada version. I can't put it up in the A tier. Normally that's probably where I would put the Armada version, but Cortex is going to be in the B tier. Then we got the solar panel, the T1 solar panel. C tier for me, just because it is a very inefficient metal to energy ratio. That's the only reason. So if you can avoid building T1 solar, I would definitely recommend it. Obviously, some maps are a T1 solar specific map, or just solar specific maps in general. There's no wind available, so you kind of just have to do with it what you can, and that's a less than ideal situation. So it is better than Armada in the fact that it doesn't cost quite as much metal. It's like, I think, 5 metal less per solar panel, so there is a slight advantage there. Now we have the metal extractor, T1 metal extractor. That is going to be S tier. Metal extractors are the foundation to your economy, and every person is going to try to maximize the amount of metal extractors that they have in their possession. It's kind of the key in order to scaling efficiently. So definitely an S tier economy building. The build turret we're going to actually put in A tier. Second, guys, I need to mute this. And we're back. Okay. So the build turret is definitely going to be A tier. It's very effective. It can auto track onto whatever buildings need to be built and aid with the construction, and it's a very stable and consistent form of build power. It's also the cheapest form of build power that is available to any of the factions. So A tier in the fact that it is very reliable and consistent. The one issue I do have with it, and why I'm not going to put it in S tier, is the fact that it does chain react very easily, to the point where if like 2 units hit your build power a couple times, then your entire build power will just be eliminated. So I don't love that fact with these. They are rather weak, but they do have a decent amount of usability, and you can't really get through an entire game of Beyond All Reason without building some build turrets. Next, we got energy storage, T1, S tier. This is something that makes a player stand out beyond a relative noob, and that is whether or not you build energy storage. Energy storage is extremely valuable because as you get in, it basically hedges your economy to grow in T2. If you only have just windmills with no energy storage and you try to go T2, it's a huge zap in energy. So I definitely recommend building 1 or 2 of these before your transition and trying to get the energy stored up so that you're able to just release all that energy that you had stored into your T2 economy. So very valuable. Next, we have the exploiter. I want to put it in S tier, but I'm actually going to put it in A tier. The exploiter is extremely good, but it's not something that you want to build every single game in every single mechs, because it is a little bit more expensive. It's very valuable in T1, but it does have limited viability once you get into it's very valuable in a 1v1. But once you get into like 8v8s and larger team games, the lanes become much more established. So going for an exploiter is just kind of an unnecessary cost if it's not on the front line. But if you do want to build a mechs that's on the front line and a little bit of a more risky situation, then I would definitely recommend building the exploiter, because it does have a lot of HP. It has more HP than a light laser tower, and essentially does the same amount of damage with the same amount of radius of attack. So it is a very strong upgrade to a mechs, but don't go building them all over the entire map if it's not in like a 1v1 situation. Next, we have the metal storage. This is going to be B tier. Metal storage is valuable and a very good thing to have, but it does have like I believe the cost is around 500 metal a piece. So it's good for like an emergency storing of value. Say for instance, you have a giant reclaim field of maybe like 30,000 metal or something, but you don't have the build power yet built up to be able to spend it all. Then having like 3 or 4 metal storages to try to contain all that metal so that you retain the value could be good. It's just, it does have a certain cost to it as well. I wouldn't necessarily say build these every game. I would say build them as needed when you have to. You know, it's more something you do because you have to rather than wanting to. And it's really just for those massive influx of metal from a reclaim field that you would want to store that value. Okay. Next, we got the T2 solar, or it's technically the advanced solar. I'm going to put this B tier because it is a little bit better than the T1 solar, the basic solar, but it does have a large amount of energy cost. I would only use the advanced solars in a solar only map where you're trying to build up enough energy for a fusion, because it does have a very good energy to metal income ratio compared to the T1 solar, but it also has a large energy cost. So it's something that you kind of want to devote a lot of time into, get your energy solars upgraded to advanced energy solars, and then from there build a fusion reactor. I would use it as like a springboard into fusion, if that makes sense. That's kind of my recommendation. I wouldn't recommend, just if you're T1 and you're staying T1 for the foreseeable future, I wouldn't recommend building a bunch of these solar panels because they have such a large energy cost tied to them. I would only use them to springboard a more expensive like fusion reactor. Excuse me. That's my personal opinion. All right, now we have the Geo. Geo is going S tier. The geothermal plant is, I believe, one of the most efficient energy sources in the game. So if you have a geothermal plant at your disposal, it is extremely valuable to go for it. I believe it's like equal to some 30 wind speed or something like that in efficiency. It's ridiculous. Okay. So almost always prioritize the geothermal plant if you can. Very valuable. Next, we have the advanced energy converter. I'm actually going to put this in B tier because it is quite costly. It does cost a significant amount of metal, but the reason why it is valuable is the fact that once you get into the late game, you can just scale your economy massively over time. And you don't have to, it has a lot less micro attached to it compared to the T1 energy converters, and it is able to just put it's a lot more dense as well. So if you're running low on space or you don't want your economy to be so widespread, it's very nice to have it kind of more compact and easier to defend in that way. So definitely recommend these. They are very good. Advanced metal extractor, S tier. Both metal extractors extremely valuable. In fact, I would put this in like S plus if I could, because it is even better than your basic metal extractor. This gives you 4 times your income, and this is where you're going to see a massive jump in economy. And so I just cannot overstate the importance of your advanced metal extractors. They are the creme de la creme of your economy, and that's going to be where you really start hitting close to your infinite scale point. So next we got the advanced metal storage. I'm actually going to put this in D tier. Reason being is it is too much for too much, if that makes sense. I already don't like metal storage in general, but having a ton of metal storage just doesn't seem like a good idea unless absolutely necessary. And there's a decent cost tied to it as well. So I mean, usually if you're playing with thousands and thousands of metal to the point where you need advanced metal storage, then that means you didn't scale your build power enough. So you shouldn't ever have to build an advanced metal storage, in my opinion. Same with the energy storage. Advanced energy storage is another D tier, in my opinion, because at the point where you need an advanced energy storage or have the ability to build an advanced energy storage, you should be having a fusion or an advanced fusion. And those have energy storage tied to them, which means that you should have enough energy to be able to build anything in the entire game without running out. And if you don't have enough, then you need to build a fusion or an advanced fusion anyway. So what's the point in building the storage? Because it's just there is no point. There is no point. Anyway, next we have the advanced geo, S tier. Once again, very, very, very strong. It is cheaper than a fusion and provides I believe a little bit more energy than a fusion. So if you have a geothermal plant at your disposal, this is a great first T2 energy production for you. It will help you get jump started and be able to get some of your conversion going, so that like what I would recommend is building one advanced geo with one energy converter that ties in perfectly, so that you can convert all the excess energy and start to scale your economy. Once again, I would even go for your advanced geo maybe before getting your advanced mexes done, because it just provides that energy boost you need for even the advanced mexes, because advanced mexes do cost quite a bit of energy to build as well. Next, we have the Advanced Exploiter. I'm actually put it in B tier. The Advanced Exploiter is very good at taking out things like spam, and it does have a pretty heavy punch to it. But a lot of times in the late game, there's so much ranged artillery and ranged units that are able to take out the Advanced Exploiter that it is not really worth building them unless you just want. I'm not going to put an F tier, Chili, just because based on the fact that you can help with spam, it is a turret that can shoot down heavier units even, and it does have more health, which means you can retain the metal extractor for longer. I think that that does add some value to it. But keep in mind, you shouldn't be spamming these everywhere, right? It just doesn't make sense to. And they do start to drop in usability as you get later into the game. Fusion reactor. I'm gonna put this actually in B tier. Especially the Cortex fusion reactor, because the Cortex fusion reactor costs a little bit more metal than the Armada fusion reactor. It just doesn't scale quite as well, and it takes a little bit longer to get your energy going. So it does kind of fall off compared to the Armada versions. So that's why I'm going to be putting that in B tier. Next, we've got the Cerberus. This is A tier, I would say. Cerberus is extremely powerful. It does have a long range artillery, but you do lose some of your energy production because of it. So it's kind of a trade off. It's situational, but with for what it does, it is very good at it. You see it a lot on maps like the Forge, where you need that long range artillery to be able to shut down the like narrow hallways and stuff. So I definitely do recommend using it situationally, and it is very strong to have in your arsenal. Next, we have the Advanced Fusion. This is going to be S tier, in my opinion. The Advanced Fusion, especially for Cortex, is extremely valuable because it has a bit less cost to it compared to Armada, whereas the Armada versions are a little bit more expensive. And this is where you can really start maximizing your scaling to the point where you're able to just like exponentially expand and overwhelm your opponents with just sheer force. So definitely a very good building to have, as far especially since it's the cheapest version of the APHIS. So in my opinion, just puts it at the top instantly. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.